again, I don't feel like it's a surrender because I don't think that it necessarily means that A.O. Scott has somehow replaced these critics. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to who you trust. Now, I'd be the first to admit, there are some people who, they don't trust anyone. They only trust either what's popular or only their opinion matters. And they don't want to have a discussion, and that's fine. But I think that even online, there are people you trust because they're strong writers. And it's funny because we talk about all these named critics, but we haven't mentioned probably the greatest threat to criticism, at least on a consumer level, is Rotten Tomatoes. Because a film is either fresh or rotten. And if it's 82% fresh, well, that means 82% critics liked it. Even though, I mean, anyone who's criticized a film will tell you that there's usually more gradients than that. And that a film that you gave 2.5 stars to is not as good as you gave a film 4 stars to, but Rotten Tomatoes counts it the same. So on the one hand, I like the site because they offer me the reviews quickly as a huge base of, I can go check out what Robert Ebert thought, what A.O. Scott thought. They're all collected. But at the same time, I feel that, come back to what's faster, on a consumer level, Rotten Tomatoes is popular for a reason. And I think that when people follow a critic, it's not about necessarily where they're going to come from anymore. It's about where that reader went and stayed there because they liked that critic. Now, I'm not saying that's me. In fact, I get quite a lot of angry responses, and my brother tells me all about them because he reads the comments and I don't. But that, I think that I know writers on other sites, and they have a following. And at the end of the day, you'll have someone that trusts this critic. And they'll trust other critics as well, but I don't think that they're fading away. I just think they're coming from different places.
But I think we are losing something in the financial support system. I mean, we've got some of our best writers aren't professional critics, but they've got good taste and they know how to write excellently. But the Chuck Klostermans of the world, the great writers typically develop that way because they've had someone give them a full-time job and time to go out on the road and do in-depth stories, or and that part of it is disappearing. It's sort of the middle strata of critics, and it does make me worry about that upper strata.
And the mentorship of a great editor. You hear these stories, right, about the New York Times editors or the New Yorker, and these sort of epic figures who, young writer gets hired to start writing stories, and then over time they develop this rapport and they give them a big break and so on. And there is something about that, and I think in your case you actually work with an editor, which again in the online world isn't always the case. I think the biggest lament is the passing of the great editor, because there may not be such a thing. I mean, there are quality websites, and I hate the distinction between web and print. I think it has more to do with the journalistic ethics and the quality of the writing itself. That's the end result. But I do worry about, if there's not a successful financial model, that people will be forced to pay their bills one way and write for the love of writing and love of criticism to keep it alive. But it's a shame that there's not this this structure in place that may help support it. And if that structure is close to what you're saying, which is public support, or this model where you can put a few things out there and get some bigger investors, if that's the model, it's going to be a tough road to hoe.
And I think it does come back to the economics of it, because there's very little inherent in print versus web and the medium that makes either one of those preferable to build up a writer. It's just that the financial support there it's just not there on the web. And I tend to think that will be there eventually, but hopefully it's not too long where we lose a lot of great critics and without a lot of people in the pipeline to really fill their space. And Elvis Mitchell 3-4 years ago left the New York Times to go do whatever he's doing now. It wasn't going to be development, but diversity I think may suffer as well, because large media organizations tended to have more conscious thought to, having diverse voices because of who they were serving. And I don't know that that's evolved as much on the web.
I mean, I absolutely agree, both with the editorship. I think when you write on the web, you have to you have to seek out the better writers and ask for their help. There's no mentorship as much. And also the diversity. I go on these set visits, and maybe there's one female journalist in this movie, writing for these movie websites, and it's absurd that it's that way. And I don't think, I know Collider doesn't, just force out someone. And we have this great writer, Nicole Peterson, who really helped us out. But she was writing because she liked to write, and she had another job. But I don't think that's necessarily, that just stops people from not reading or caring about your opinion. I mean, how many blogs have there been where someone is writing, working during the day and writing during the night? And you just have to do it because you love it. And it's like anything. I mean, a lot of creative professions is you work a day job and then you try to find a way to get paid to do what you love. And I don't think that's necessarily because the web doesn't make enough money. It's just a struggle that affects many professions.
Money doesn't stop it, but it certainly doesn't. The lack of it certainly doesn't help. You have your, Ignatius Riley, is the writer of, you might know what I'm talking about, the Infinite Jest? No, sorry. Anyway, occasionally you'll get a great work of fiction by an author who's a first-time novelist and did it at night. But generally, it's more often than not people who got paid in advance, developed their writing somehow, got paid in advance, and got to spend, a big chunk of their time writing the great novel. And, money is a key part of that. It certainly doesn't stop it, but money helps develop that from a sort of systematic perspective.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying that when you start out, you can get that advance, just like a screenwriter can make that pitch that gets them paid, but others just have to write entirely on spec. Some authors have to write a manuscript and shop it around. And they don't have the money. They have to do it because they love it. And also, the web model doesn't, obviously, I agree that we couldn't have a staff of 16 people that we pay. But at the same time, there are so many great critics working on these movie websites. Russ Fisher, who is based in Atlanta, he freelances for Paste. Drew McWeeny, who is one of the forefathers of this. He was writing for Ain't It Cool News under the pseudonym Moriarty back in '95. And these are all people that have paid their dues. There are many more. And I don't think that just because they didn't start out on print or that they aren't named, that their reviews have less impact. In fact, I just feel they're the next wave.